Hi teachers, this is your virtual content specialist for Social Studies Grade 2, and today we're doing part 2 of the video series about New York City's homes and buildings over time. Today we're going to talk about the project-based assignment. So the focus question for this unit, for this lesson is, how did New York City's homes and buildings change from the 1700s to the 1900s? The learning target for this lesson is recreate a building that is appropriate to a specific time period in New York City's history. So the task, recreate a model of homes or buildings from any time period in New York City's history. Now this is from the lesson plan. You'll be going over this with your students. You may select a model home from the 1600s through today. Design your model on paper, cardboard, or slides. So ideally, they're going to be designing it out of cardboard or some kind of box or recycled material from their house. But if they are low on materials, then designing it on or drawing it on a piece of paper or even creating it digitally is also an option. So these are the images and the details of the homes that are in your lesson. Really have the students analyze and look at these images as, primary or secondary sources that can give them the details or the information that they need to create their model. So once they decide on a house or a time period, have the students think about and plan before they make their model. What shapes are they going to use? What they think the building is made out of, how many stories it has, what kind of windows it has, how many windows, does it have a porch, what color is it? All those little details, have them help them to brainstorm and to make a plan. So here is some 1700s images. And that discussion that you had in the prior lesson will really help you because you compared and contrast the different homes to today. So you can say that it's really important for people to know which time period or which home they're designing. So how can you make it stand out and not just look like a rectangle with windows indoors? Okay, 1900s homes from that lesson. All right, together we're going to watch this video for the Center for Architecture. And this is something that I would suggest to show your students. And it's only a 2-minute video. Have them watch it, but have them watch it with the lens that they're going to have to retell the steps as a class together, and they can collectively retell the steps. And I think that this will really help them synthesize what the artist did to really add that extra detail and information to their design. Okay, then also think about the order. Have the students think about what order they did the steps in. What materials did they use? Brainstorm if those other types of materials that they could have or find around their house. And how this all applies to their design. So let's watch this video together. So there's a couple ways you could obviously watch it. You could pause and talk about it together, but you could also um, have them just watch it and then think about retelling it. So here is how we could retell the video. Okay, step one. First, the artist drew the main pattern of the material the house was made of on a piece of paper. In this case, it was brick. So think aloud with your students. How could you show wood? How could you use other materials? Think about what some of the other houses are made out of. How could you show that? So you could brainstorm that. People could give ideas in the class. Step two. Next, they got a box that was a rectangle and taped it together so it was a solid shape. Brainstorm other shapes and sizes of boxes students could use for their design. So some of the examples in the pictures were like milk cartons. Maybe they have a box from some sort of like delivery. Emphasize that they can use anything from their recycling. Okay? Anything they have around the house. If it's in the classroom, students could bring in something that they saved at home. Step three, the artist used the papers that they colored to cover the box. Sometimes they folded the paper to make it wrap around and fit. Sometimes they cut the paper to make it fit. After they made sure it fit, they glued it to the box, but you can tell them they can also use tape. All right, step four. Next, they cut out a door and windows. The artist used a recycled paper bag for the door. They used construction paper for the windows. After they made sure it fit, they glued it to the box. You can also use tape. And have the students think about their building. What kind of door does it have? How many floors? Does it have a lot of windows? Have them to think about. This is where you start to plan or decide. They have to look back at their photograph, their model building, to analyze, to think about that as a historical document and that they're recreating it. Step five. Now they added some architectural details to their design. Using crayons, they colored in shapes and cut them out. They used construction paper and colored paper for other details. Some details for windows and doors show more information about the time period the building is from. So have students make sure they look back and make sure there isn't any special details that they should add. And explain that this is how they're going to know what time period this is from. So really going that extra mile to not just have rectangles for windows and doors. All right, step six, the last step. Last, they use the same paper bag to make a roof. They cut out the shape of the roof and attached it to the building. Next, they use old magazines. You can tell them they can use any like junk mail that your parents got that they didn't want, old papers, anything you have that could be recycled or that you have laying around the house. And they picked out colors to cut out and add more detail to the roof. Okay, then explain to the students that roofs from different time periods have different details, right? So some of them are pointed, some of them are flat, some of them have all different shapes to really make sure that their roof is looking like their photograph or their painting. And in the end, they use pencil and crayon to add more fine details to their building. Okay? And then this is also for the Center for Architecture. And here are some architectural details that the students might see in their buildings, and just a really good resource or detail to explain to them to think about how they could add those details. For students recreating, always make sure to talk about the shapes, like, oh, what shape would you cut for that, or what would you draw? It would be a rectangle, or I would use a curved line, or I would cut out a circle first. Really help them plan because if they really think of everything in terms of shapes, that's really going to help them with their design. And last, here's a resource in case the students do not have any kind of materials or limited materials. This is also from the Center for Architecture, and it explains in very simple, clear steps how they can make a drawing of their model building. And here is the step-by-step PDF of that, and also a how-to video. All right, so I hope this is giving you some ideas and tricks to use to create your buildings in the classroom. Here. And your designs, I'm going to show you here some examples from the lesson that they gave you here, so you can see the different construction paper. Many of these students made like a triangle roof. Here is something you can do with butcher paper to add texture. Here's an example of wood. And here, this is from a classroom project where they put them all together. The meal here, trees, and the triangular roofs. But depending on what era your students are making the buildings from, then you can show them this. These were done with milk cartons that already kind of have that triangle roof taught to them. All right, so I hope this has given you some tips and inspiration to do this project with your students from either remote or in person.